Hi, everybody. This is David Nevins for City Biz, and welcome to our discussion today. I think we have a very interesting discussion today, and hopefully you will agree. We're joined by two guests. Jonathan Schochor, he is the founding partner and chairman of Schochor, Staton, Goldberg and Cardea, a very prominent law firm with offices in Maryland and the District of Columbia. And we are also joined by Teresa Lancaster, also an attorney and a nationally recognized victims' rights advocate. Thank you both for joining us today.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
So, as some of our viewers may know, the Child Victims Act law, which eliminates the statute of limitations for sexual abuse victims to bring forth civil lawsuits in the state of Maryland, takes effect October 1st. Jonathan, if you don't mind, I'd like to start with you and just run through for our viewers, what does that mean?
Well, David and viewers, the law represents a tremendous victory for sexual abuse victims in Maryland. It eliminates or lifts the statute of limitations, permitting victims to come forward and access our civil justice system. They get the opportunity to go to court if necessary, face their abusers, and the institutions responsible for permitting this horrendous conduct to go on in the case of the Archdiocese for over 80 years, and permits them to be vindicated and compensated for what occurred to them. I want to say this, if you'll permit me. With my experience in sexual abuse cases, I have learned that our clients, the victims in all of this, need help. They need two kinds of help. They need legal representation by skilled lawyers who care about them, support them, and advise them. And they need help from skilled medical practitioners, psychiatrists, and psychologists. And in my humble opinion, having been at the bar for over 50 years, they need this help. They need this counseling. They need the support now, not a year or two from now or three, however long this litigation takes, but now. So Teresa and I have teamed up with my firm, and we are furnishing to our clients counseling now. Psychiatric, psychological, other counseling necessary to help them gain closure and hopefully close some wounds and move on to become more productive members of society. I don't know of any other firm doing that, but it needs to be done. And Teresa and I and our team are doing it.
So, spoken quite passionately, Jonathan, with appreciation. Teresa, some of our viewers may recognize your story from the Netflix series, The Keepers. As I mentioned in the introduction, you're an attorney, and sadly, you're also a victim of sexual abuse. Please tell our viewers your story, if you don't mind, and how you and the team at Schochor and Staton are going about attempting to bring justice, or at least partial justice, I guess, to women like yourself.
Sure. The Keepers tells my story about how I was sexually abused while at high school. Archbishop Keogh. Father Maskell had a sex abuse ring going there where a number of the girls were abused. And some of the girls went to talk to a Sister Kathy, and she tried to help us. She was going to stop Maskell, and she ended up murdered over the summer. That's what The Keepers dives into, about how she was murdered trying to help the girls. And we still don't have an answer to the murder case. I reached out to the law firm, John Schochor, because I I know about their knowledge and their experience, and most importantly, their compassion. I work with them, they support me, they help me in any manner that I need. And John did touch on to the fact that a lot of survivors need help, therapy, and they're open to that. And I really, really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's quite a long process, as I know, to attempt to get justice. Jonathan, maybe you could educate or inform our viewers. What we're talking about here are civil cases, not necessarily criminal cases. And your firm is clearly among the nationally, the recognized leaders. You've secured huge awards for previous victims. Just again, walk us through the difference, civil versus criminal, and what does the process look like here?
Well, there's a tremendous difference between a criminal prosecution and civil litigation. In a criminal prosecution, you have the state or some entity with an attorney prosecuting the criminal who's the abuser. In civil litigation, you have the victims, our clients, Teresa and others, coming to court with us if necessary. I believe the case will settle, but let's talk about that later. Coming to court if necessary to prove their case. In a criminal prosecution, you must prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the burden of proof, as it's called. In a civil case, the burden is much lower. You must prove your case only by a preponderance of the evidence, 51% certainty versus beyond a reasonable doubt. The analogy I always use to explain it to juries and clients is in a criminal prosecution, if you can imagine this, the football would have to get into the end zone for a score. In a civil prosecution, a civil case, which is what we are involved in, all we have to do is cross the 50-yard line. 51% proof, a preponderance of the evidence.
So, Teresa, you've bravely put yourself forward as a victim of sexual abuse. Share with us, for the benefit of other victims who may be watching or know of people who share this information. Share with us a little bit about the process, and I'm also very interested in your work on behalf of other victim rights advocates.
Yes, I work with victims. I listen to them, and I know about their pain and their shame, and I know how they can sometimes lose themselves. I work with them, I can identify with them, and they know this because of my story. I urge the victims to come forward now and reach out to us. John Schochor, the firm, and I are here to help you. And you will be believed, and you will not be alone. You don't have to worry about hiding in the dark anymore, because we brought this topic to light, and we're here to get justice.
Again, good for you. Jonathan, I know that you spoke very clearly about the difference between a criminal case and a civil case. I think I may have even misspoken earlier by saying, by referencing women. So not all victims of sexual abuse are women, and not all abusers, by the way, are potentially members of the clergy. Talk a little bit, Jonathan, as to the depth and breadth of the cases you've seen, and particularly those that are likely to come forward as the result of the elimination of the statute of limitations on October 1st.
Certainly. There's a misconception out and about, that it's the archdiocese only. It certainly is the archdiocese and its affiliates. But in addition to that, any sexual abuser can be sued civilly in the state of Maryland now. What do I mean by that? Teachers at schools, any schools, not just Catholic schools, coaches, allied professionals, prison guards, any abuser and or institution that permitted that conduct to occur and continue can be sued. And I'll say this also, you don't need to live in Maryland to bring a civil lawsuit. Anyone who is abused in Maryland, regardless of where they reside or live now, has a cause of action, meaning they have a suit.
Teresa, with just a couple minutes left, talk to, as if you're speaking among our audience, to people who potentially have been sexually abused, and just talk to them about the process and the thinking, and then how they can take action going forward.
Sure. We've waited decades for this law to be lifted, and the process would be to come to us, John or me, and talk to me. I'll listen to you about what happened to you, and I will explain where to go from there. It's just a little bit of paperwork, and we will take care of filing your lawsuit for you. And it's designed to be as painless as possible. Again, we're here to help you also emotionally. We know how emotional these things are, but come forward because we won and we want to get justice finally.
Again, thank you, Teresa. Jonathan, I know, you've been, long before this law on October 1st, you've been representing victims of sexual abuse, and quite successfully so at your firm. Just talk a little bit about, so on October 1st, what do you expect to happen? And I know, sadly, I guess I would say, you've indicated that you're getting a lot of phone calls into your office. And on the one hand, that's great that victims know there's someone out there that can potentially successfully represent them. On the other hand, it's just sad to see there's been so much of this, and these people have had to keep quiet about it for decades and decades, no longer so. So just, Jonathan, kind of in closing, share with us what should these folks do and how should they go about this?
The first step is to hear us and to reach out for a confidential meeting with Teresa and myself and our team. Confidential, strictly confidential, no obligation, but to hear what the process is all about. And that meeting can be by Zoom, it could be by telephone, it can be in person. It is up to each individual victim to make that choice. That's number one. Two, Teresa, myself, and the team will protect your anonymity to the fullest extent of the law. Some victims want to remain anonymous, Jane Doe, John Doe's, whatever. It's fine. Some victims want to be heard, like Teresa. That's fine. But if they want anonymity, we're going to protect it to the fullest extent of the law, as I said. Three, I think it's important to repeat, we will provide them immediate psychiatric and or psychological confidential counseling, because I fervently believe, and so does Teresa, that these folks, our clients, need help now. Finally, I would counsel these folks that we're a contingency fee law firm. We will only earn a legal fee if we're successful for you. You have no financial obligation up front. A lot of people don't have the wherewithal or the financial backing to gain access to the civil litigation system in complex litigation like this. We provided no expenses to the victims. It will cost you nothing to talk to us and come forward. And what do I expect on October 1st? Lawsuits are going to be filed. And I think there'll be class action litigation, requesting certification. It's up to the courts to certify it. And there'll be some individual litigation. I expect both.
Could you just share for a second the difference between the two?
Certainly. And a one-off or an individual coming to us and saying they don't want to be part of a class action, we would file a lawsuit and we would have to go through the entire discovery process on behalf of that plaintiff and go through all the machinations time and time again for individual cases. A class action is much more efficient in my experience and judgment. A class action puts together the victims who want to be a part of it. And we file on behalf of representative plaintiffs. It is one case with one set of discovery, and we move forward in a much more efficient style. We don't spend nearly the money that would not necessarily be spent if we had a file for 500 individuals versus one class action. The 500 victims are part of the class. When we prevail, I'm optimistic, but we'll prevail. When we prevail, Teresa, myself, and the team, then there'll be an assessment of damages for each individual plaintiff. They're not just thrown into a lump, but they're evaluated in an appropriate fashion, and they would be compensated based upon what occurred, how many times it occurred, and how severe was it, and how much damage occurred. So the class action, in my judgment, is much more efficient, cost efficient, and time efficient for our clients if they want to participate. Again,
thank you. And Teresa, I think I just would like to give you the last word because you are a victim. You've shared your story nationally, and just take a couple seconds and talk to folks out there about their next step if they feel so inclined.
Sure. Again, we've waited an awful long time for this law to be changed, and we won. So your next step would be to reach out to myself and to John and the firm, and we will help. We will listen. And like John says, if you want to remain anonymous, that's fine. If you want to do an individual case, that's fine. But basically, we care. And I can assure you, I understand what it's like to be a victim. And we can help you with that too.
Again, Jonathan, thank you. And Teresa, thank you. Not only for what you're doing, but for your bravery as well. We will have on the screen, for those who need it, additional contact information. So I won't ask either of you for your email or phone numbers. It will be showing on the screen. And I do want to thank you both for your time, and urge our viewers who have the need to reach out if you feel so inclined.
In my experience, having that other huge case, what we didn't reference today, but that's fine. There's strength in numbers. Our victims and clients have to understand they're not alone anymore. We need to band together and stop these institutions from this conduct of permitting sexual abuse and then covering it up. And a victim comes forward, not only he or she vindicates themselves, but they stop these institutions from this conduct and stop other victims from becoming victims. It's not just yourself. You will be doing it for others. Together, we can stop them.
Jonathan, I think you made a great last point that, not only is there an opportunity for you as an individual to seek justice and some compensation, but perhaps even the bigger benefit is you're saving others and future generations from the same thing that you went through. Teresa
Precisely.
and Jonathan, thank you both for your time.
Thank you.
Many thanks for having us. Teresa, thank you for joining us. I look forward to seeing you next week.
Yes, yes.
We've been speaking with Teresa Lancaster, who is a victims' rights advocate, and we've also been speaking with Jonathan Schochor, the founding partner and chairman of Schochor, Staton, Goldberg and Cardea. Contact them if you have an interest. And this has been David Nevins for City Biz. Thank you all for watching, and thank you both for joining us today.